Elderly man with a cognitive disorder killed in a traffic accident after sneaking out of a care home. Protest march against political screening for next month's LegCo elections. And in Turkey, a bomb blast targeting a wedding celebration leaves 50 people dead.
Good evening. 2 elderly people died in 2 separate traffic accidents today. In one of the cases, it's believed that the victim, who suffered from cognitive disorder, sneaked out of a home for the elderly in the middle of the night. At around 2 a.m. this morning, a minibus knocked down a 79-year-old man nearby Lokwa North Estate in Autaukok. The man suffered head injuries and was unconscious when he was sent to hospital. He was certified dead later. The 71-year-old minibus driver, meanwhile, has been arrested on suspicion of dangerous driving causing death. The elderly victim suffered from cognitive disorder and was a resident of a home for the elderly located near the scene of the accident. A representative of the home said usually the doors are locked at the time of the accident. The center is looking into how the elderly man got out. The government expressed concern over the incident. Secretary for Labor and Welfare, Matthew Leung, said the authorities will follow up the probe into the tragedy. Meanwhile, another fatal traffic accident happened in Chai Wan at around 10 this morning. A taxi that was making a turn onto Kat Sing Street knocked down an 82-year-old woman. She was rushed to hospital and was certified dead in the afternoon. Police arrested the 58-year-old taxi driver. An investigation into the incident is continuing. Demonstrators took to the streets today to protest against what they believe was political screening of candidates for the upcoming LegCo election. Organizers say 1,300 took part in the rally and march to the chief executive's office, while police say their count was close to 760 people. Rachel Leung reports.
Chanting their demands, protesters kicked off the rally in Causeway Bay. They questioned why 6 pro-independence candidates were barred from standing in the upcoming LegCo election.
This is like the freedom of speech in Hong Kong is being eroded, so that we think that we should to take to the street to express our the discontent of being some candidates having different political thoughts. They cannot enter the Legislative Council to express their voice.
Rally organizer Civil Human Rights Front says it's important to protect the rights of Hong Kong citizens.
Although Civil Human Rights Front do not have any position about the independence of Hong Kong, but we think that it is the rights of the Hong Kong people to discuss about these issues, and the government do not have any right to take over the rights of the Hong Kong people.
During the rally, some were handing out this flyer here, encouraging others to vote in the upcoming LegCo election on September 4th. Police closed off one of the traffic lanes on Hennessy Road as the crowd walked past Wan Chai and Admiralty. The rally ended at around 5 o'clock. Responding to the march, the government says it has been handling matters in strict accordance with the Basic Law, the relevant legislation, with a view to ensure the election would be held in an open, fair and honest manner. Rachel Leung, TVB News.
Local delegate to the National People's Congress says Beijing remains supportive of Hong Kong as a global hub for offshore renminbi business. Priscilla Lau says the recent arguments over Hong Kong independence will not affect this policy. Lau, who is also an economics academic, says the upcoming Shenzhen Hong Kong Stock Connect program means Beijing now has confidence in managing its economy and stock market. Adam Shu with more.
China's stock market rout last year and the authorities' bungled attempt to staunch the bleeding, as well as the botched circuit breaker system early this year, have cast a pall on the Shenzhen Hong Kong Stock Connect. The scheme will allow investors from the 2 regions to trade stocks in each other's market by the end of this year. There are concerns that local investors may suffer from closer ties with the mainland's heavily intervened market, but Lau says Beijing has learned the lesson.
Actually, I have the chance to talk to the chairman of the CSRC, and I told him that the investors should face only the business risk, market risk, interest risk, exchange risk. They have to bear this kind of risks, but not political or policy risks. The surveillance body, they understand that they cannot intervene into the market directly. They cannot change the policy frequently. Just allow the market to function.
Lau says as the authorities come to terms with a slower but steady economic growth rate and the renminbi's exchange rate stabilizes, they believe it's the best time to open another stock exchange channel on top of the Shanghai-Hong Kong Stock Connect scheme. Financial Secretary John Tsang wrote on his blog today the Stock Connect with Shenzhen can solidify Hong Kong's standing as a global hub for offshore renminbi business. Lau agrees.
Actually, the central government has already raised our status. Say for RMB, we are the global RMB business hub instead of using the center. I reminded them, okay, you can develop the RMB business in Singapore, in London, but they cannot compare with Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, we have more than 70% of the RMB transactions and business. Of course, we are the hub.
Lau said pro-independence views won't have any impact on this role of the SAR.
If we look at those political issues, it's very minor, only within a small circle. The major business activities, economic activities, they are not affected. The business world knows very well our position, our relationship to the mainland. And we are getting closer and closer, and we will benefit from the development of our country.
Adam Xu, TVB News.
Okay.
Police have arrested a man for placing calls on 3 occasions. They say he made false bomb threats to prevent his girlfriend's flight from taking off. The 41-year-old suspect was taken back to his home to help with the investigation in the early hours today. It was reported that he called the police yesterday afternoon to falsely report there were explosives at Hong Kong International Airport, which prompted a search. He was arrested at the airport.
Turning overseas now, the death toll has risen to 50 with dozens injured after a suspected suicide bomber targeted a wedding celebration in the Turkish city of Gaziantep. There has been no claim of responsibility, but Turkey's president blames Islamic State for the latest in a series of deadly assaults to rock the nation. James Aiken reports.
Shock and confusion after the deadliest bombing in Turkey this year. Security officials say the suspected suicide bomber appeared to have waited for just the right moment to detonate an explosive as a late-night wedding party moved its celebration into the street. Turkey's deputy prime minister, who along with the health minister visited the wounded in hospital, called the attack unprecedented cruelty and barbarism. In a statement, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan also condemned the attack and said it was likely the work of Islamic State militants. Outside the hospital, a crowd waved a Turkish flag chanting, "Our country cannot be divided." As he surveyed the scene later, local resident Ibrahim Özdemir said his friends and neighbors had attended the wedding. The attack was carried out like an atrocity, he said. We want these massacres to end. We are in pain, especially the women and children. The attack in a city near the border with Syria is the latest in a surge in violence this week in the mainly Kurdish southeast. A wave of attacks in the past year have either been blamed on Islamic State or claimed by Kurdish militants, linked to the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. In June, suspected Islamic State militants attacked Istanbul's main airport with guns and bombs, killing 44 people. A fragile peace process between the PKK and the government collapsed last year, leading to the resumption of the 3-decade-long conflict. Turkey is still reeling from last month's failed coup attempt, which the government blames on U.S.-based Muslim cleric Fethullah Gulen and his followers. Erdogan says there is absolutely no difference between Islamic State, Kurdish rebels, and Gulen's movement. Gulen denies any involvement. James Aiken, TVB News.
In Afghanistan, government troops have forced out Taliban fighters from a strategic district in the north hours after the insurgents had taken control of the area. Afghan forces retreated to the provincial capital of Kunduz after the Taliban overran the district of Kanabad early yesterday. Government troops later regrouped and took back the area from the militants. Fighting has sharply escalated in Afghanistan since the insurgency started spreading from its strongholds in the southern and eastern parts of the country to the north. The provincial capital of Kunduz also briefly fell to the Taliban in September last year. The militant group was ousted from power by U.S. and coalition forces in late 2001. It's now seeking to force the NATO-led coalition out of Afghanistan and bring in Islamic law.
The older brother of a Syrian boy whose image taken after an airstrike shocked people around the world has died in Aleppo from his wounds. The doctor who treated 10-year-old Ali Dagnesh said the boy had suffered serious injuries as he had not been pulled out of the rubble immediately, as his younger brother was. Ali's younger brother, 5-year-old Omran, was pictured in the back of an ambulance after being pulled out from the rubble. The video and pictures have been widely circulated, refocusing public opinion on Syria's 5-year-old civil war and the plight of civilians, particularly in Aleppo.
Republican U.S. presidential nominee Donald Trump says his party has to do better in its outreach to minority voters. The remarks follow a shakeup in Trump's campaign management in the face of falling poll numbers. A new poll shows Democratic rival Hillary Clinton leads Trump by 8 percentage points among likely voters.
I fully recognize the outreach to the African American community is in an area where the Republican Party must do better, and it will do better. The GOP is the party of Abraham Lincoln. And I want our party to be the home of the African American voter once again.
And still ahead. The number of those benefiting from the low-income working family allowance far below the government's estimate. China wins the first women's volleyball Olympic gold in 12 years. And the world's longest glass-bottom bridge.
The game.